So we've been talking about the Mongols for 2 weeks now, and now we're going to look at the final slide for the Mongols, the impact of them. And we're going to be looking at it in 3 ways: the economic, political, and social impacts. We've been talking about the Mongols because, like I said, they're going to really set the stage for the medieval world. And I think it's a crime that your textbook does such a poo-poo job with them. So, first big political change. Russia winds up going and taking a backseat to the rest of Europe. Russia is one of those interesting countries because it's European and Asian. And compared to Europe, Russia is behind the times, and part of that is because of the Mongols. Because how they were fighting each other, because they were less interactions with other groups, they did not develop as fast. So even up until World War I, Russia will be behind. I'm actually right now reading a book to end all wars about World War I, and it's just ridiculous. Like, so Europe at that, like, by then has like the telegraph, so they're able to go communicate over distances. You know, there are airplanes and everything like that. And like the Russians, like, oh, they need to fire where they chop down telegraph poles because they'd never seen them before. They didn't realize they weren't trees. Like, they saw an airplane in the sky, they shot at the airplane, even if it was theirs, because they was like, well, it must be German because that's like magic. So they were just super behind on everything up, you know, for the next 600 years, which is kind of crazy to think about it. Also, another thing, because of the Mongols, we will have a group that actually conquers India, the Mughals, who we're actually going to be going to next week. And I like the Mughals a lot. I find them extremely fascinating, and I love talking about India. And so, yeah, the Mongols that wind up going and developing in the Ilkhanate, which is in Persia, are going to wind up going creating the Mughals, which Mughal literally means from the Mongols. Yeah, so we'll get there next week. Also, guess what? Because the Mongols go kick the Seljuk Turks' heinies, which, if you remember, we briefly talked about them during the Byzantine time, that made it so the Ottoman Turks could come to power, which the Ottomans probably sound familiar because they are the people that ended our Byzantine Empire. So it's one of those things that although the Mongols didn't do everything themselves, they set the stage to make big changes in history, which is pretty cool. And as we know, they're going to completely change warfare because Simon the Mongol says, this Chinese gunpowder is really cool. It's great for blowing stuff up. I'll tell you what, I will sell you some for some of this trade good. And the Chinese, they kept it secret, but Simon doesn't care. Simon just wants the stuff. So Simon trades these secrets, and now all these people have guns and cannons, and they start deciding to use that to murder each other. So we're going to have the time of the gunpowder empires after that, which the Mughals and Ottomans are going to be 2 out of the 3. Safavids are the 3rd. Don't worry, we'll get to them too. So we see big political changes happening because of the Mongols. Now, let's look at the social changes. One of the big things that is fantastic is the Mongols had an opportunity where they could have like stomped out a lot of religions and made everybody the animist, Mongolian native religion, but instead they let Islam and Orthodox Christianity thrive because those areas that they conquered, those were the predominant religions. Especially Orthodox Christianity was rather small. They could have stamped it out, but they didn't. You know, they conquered a lot of Muslim lands. They didn't persecute. They didn't care what religion you had. They gave freedom to all people. Another huge thing, of course, socially, is just the idea of the cultural diffusion that we've talked about. You know, when Simon is selling secrets like gunpowder, he's going to train that technology, also trades paper making, which, think about it. Like, it took Europe, you know, they were writing on animal skins at that time and how expensive that was. Now we have, you know, paper that's, you know, cheap and disposable. Although you should recycle, folks. Don't just throw it away. Recycle. Respect our planet. You know, those things, they came from China. You know, we get Marco Polo's journeys exploring the Silk Roads. We get a lot of cool stuff from that. And finally, economic, which a lot of these things are all kind of tied together, you might be noticing. We have huge global trade, which, of course, did cause Black Death and all that, but, you know, let's not worry about that. As we mentioned with the cultural diffusion, the idea of getting Chinese goods, printing, paper. Now, if it wasn't for paper and printing, we wouldn't have things like the Protestant Reformation probably wouldn't have been a big deal. We then probably wouldn't have had things like the Renaissance being a big deal. So this really does set the stage to make the world viable for humongous changes. Now, another thing too is the Mongols, they're going to wind up going and having sea travel be even more common. And let's think about this. Part of this with the sea travel is we're coming up soon to where we're going to have folks like Vasco da Gama, old Christopher Columbus, Henry Hudson. If we don't have the foundations for using a lot of sailing going on, you know, we're not going to be able to go have our exploration of what's going to become the New World, aka North America, where we are today. I mean, I'm sure a bunch of native people would have appreciated that, but, you know, we wouldn't be here now without that kind of thing. And of course, as we talked about, the spread of the bubonic plague. So, that is our political, social, and economic impact of the Mongols. Your witchcraft was not able to stop us. And we persevered. So I'm going to stop the recording. Do we have any questions?